Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through the major news and topics facing importers and manufacturers in China and Asia today. Hello again to China Manufacturing Decoded. I'm Adrian from the team, joined by Renaud Anjoran, CEO. Hi, Renaud.
Hi, Adrian, and hi, everybody.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again. Renaud, how's it going at your end in Asia?
Mainland China is under a lot of tension, and as we mentioned last time, and it hasn't gotten any better. It got worse, but as we kind of predicted, and we've done a couple of bonus episodes talking about the latest developments. So the listeners of the podcast have, can find them. They're not numbered, but they appear in the feed, in the list of recent episodes. And we try to cover it in a way that responds to the most common questions, basically.
Yeah, you've written some good blog posts as well. So as ever, links in the show notes. Take a look, guys. So I don't know if I mentioned, this is episode 98 this time. So we're closing in on the 100th. So moving away from COVID this time, we're going back onto a series of podcast episodes that we've been doing about sourcing from China. This is actually part 6. And over time, we've been exploring how to do your own sourcing from China. So that's anything from finding suppliers all the way through to getting the products made. We started off with some hard skills. Now we're moving more onto the side of soft skills. And last time in the series, we covered this in episode 92. We spoke about building rapport with your suppliers and how to keep a good relationship. Now we're going to look at how closely to follow production. There's 2 options here, either very closely as a hands-on buyer or with a bit more distance as a hands-off buyer. So the two different types of buyers here, or importer if you like. Let's start with hands-off buyers. So who or what is a hands-off buyer, please, Renaud?
Well, think of a supermarket, right? So supermarket sells a lot of food. Okay, forget about that. But let's say all the hot goods that are sold in a supermarket, a lot of them are purchased from abroad. And, the supermarket either purchases it through various types of intermediaries. It could be, importers in their country, that deliver maybe directly to the distribution center or even to the stores. It could be trading companies, maybe in Hong Kong or in China. It could be directly from manufacturers. And they have so many SKUs, so many products, right? So you're talking thousands and thousands of products. You have this kind of cable and that kind of cable and this whatever trash bin and the things to clean and the things to, it is just amazingly wide range of products, which means they have to work with an amazingly large number of suppliers too, right? So when we say hands off, it means that they cannot really follow closely on what happens at every one of the production sites and for every one of their products. It's just not economically possible because they don't always purchase very large quantities. And actually, most of the time, and in nearly all cases, it's not their own products. They have teams of buyers who have been going to the Canton Fair for years and years and years, and they keep searching. Even now, when they cannot go there, they keep searching for products that would fit their needs, their customers' needs on Alibaba and global sources and so on. They don't really know the suppliers very often. It's like, okay, this this sample is all right, the pricing is all right, they accept all our terms, everything, the time to get it produced, okay, it means we need to place an order in May, and okay, so it got validated, so we're going to place an order, and we're going to start with 3,000 of them, and then if it works, then we'll see. That's kind of the attitude. And if later they find another product that looks nicer, another sample from another supplier, they will just switch to the new supplier if again everything is okay and passes their initial review. Hands off means they cannot be hands on. They cannot keep following very closely on what happens, maybe being involved in developing or adjusting the product or anything. No. Just buy something that's existing. They just want the process to be simple. Here's the way we work. Here's the way we pay. You accept. We accept your price. Okay, go ahead with that. Here's the order. And we'll appoint such and such inspection company to do the inspection before shipment, and that's it. Right? Is the buyer is not involved, right? And in many cases, what is driving the choice of the products and of the supplier is price, because when they don't add much value to the product at all, right? They just basically gonna buy it, get it to the stores, make it available in their store environment to their customers. That's all they're doing. So they cannot sell it for 6 times the price, or they cannot do a big markup on it. And what's the difference? Yeah, is pricing. So they focus a lot on pricing, and in many cases they end up working with pretty bad suppliers, pretty crappy suppliers. That's the sad reality, right? So I'm saying supermarkets, a lot of buyers of promotional products are in that case, especially giveaway sort of products, but gift and premium in general is like that. Today they have to find a certain kind of pen, and tomorrow is a cap, and the day after is a t-shirt, and then a badge, and then who knows what. Well, that means they can't really get to know the supplier. And in many cases, they don't even care where it's made. They have a supplier, and they don't even have visibility over the manufacturer. Now, this is obviously becoming a bit of an issue with compliance, if they're in the EU, especially, because if they have no clue where it's made, then really there's not much they can say about the product. So, I mean, it's definitely related to compliance. So that's usually the kind of companies that will be hands-off buyers. We also see some buyers who should be more hands-on, but are very hands-off. And usually it comes down to a lack of experience, where they come to, let's say, to China, and then they say, this is my manufacturing partner, and there's a lot of trust in the manufacturer, and they rely on the supplier to tell them how to package the products, what labeling they need, and so on, because they don't know anything. And in most cases, they just distribute an existing product, but in some cases they do some adjustments or heavy adjustments, or even they develop an entirely new product with this supplier that they haven't visited. They just have a call from time to time with one key person, and they rely very, very much on that supplier. Well, that comes to a lack of experience, because the risk in that case is pretty high. So if your key contact leaves the factory, everything might go down from there, or if they get busy with something else or whatever, or if you trust them so much you don't even have quality inspected, and what you receive is really not what you thought you were ordering, right? So over time, these types of buyers learn from their mistakes, and they try to find the right place on the continuum between very hands-on and very hands-off. But yeah, it's kind of sad that in many cases they start very hands-off, just because if you buy domestically, let's say in the UK, well, you think, okay, there's like a catalog, and then I pick something and I send the payment, and or I wait for the product. I don't need to do much. And a lot of people think it's the same when they come to China or Vietnam or India, but it's not. It's really not.
Especially if you've got the supplier or potential supplier who's telling you, yeah, no problem, everything's going to be fine, it's all going to be shipped, such and such. So when you're drinking that sort of Kool-Aid, it's maybe easy to be too hands-off. But yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And this is the issue, and this is one of the reasons why we do this podcast or create content, because people don't always realize exactly what's involved in getting a good result, right? And that's what we're trying to do, to either provide that assistance or at least give that information. Good. Okay. So if you are a hands-off buyer, what sort of activities are you going to be doing more of, and then others maybe you only have like a light touch of?
Okay, let's follow basically the typical process of selecting and onboarding a supplier and so on. When it comes to supplier identification and screening, it's they might have a few rule of thumb. They might check maybe the Alibaba page of the supplier and try to get an idea, and and sometimes it's more formal, especially if they see that there's going to be a lot of money at stake. They might send an auditor to avoid working with the wrong kind of manufacturer. But again, in most cases, just look at their supplier. They don't really care about the manufacturer, where it's made. Yeah, they don't go very much in depth, let's say it this way, right? Then, yeah, they might do a quick check of the legal records, let's say, for example, in China, because it's easy to find if they have an account and everything. They might do some calls. They might ask for factory audit reports from other customers, things like that. Then, do they cultivate a backup supplier? Usually not, or maybe they do, but mostly for the sake of comparing prices and keeping pressure on pricing, right? Negotiating the terms, and we covered that in a previous podcast episode, but negotiating the right terms, this is something where they have buyers, and yeah, I should mention, I forget that, but hands-off buyers tend to be very much on the buyer side, not on the quality side. So the people in contact with the manufacturers and following up on what's going on with production tend to be purchasing agents, not quality people, right? So yeah, the purchasing people will be on top of the terms, and they will pay a lot of attention to that, right? Managing the risks, things like starting with a small order, in some cases paying by letter of credit, they can be quite expert at that. Again, all of the typical buyer side. Now, when it comes to documenting their requirements, that tends to be very, very poor, very, very poor. And we've talked about the importance of having a quality standard, documenting it, and making sure that the manufacturers know what you require, know what you accept and don't accept. Well, it's just really, 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 really poor for most of the hands-off buyers that I have observed. I mean, in some cases, when they do inspections, they don't even send a photo of the product, or they don't even send even a description of what the product's supposed to do and what is important. I mean, there's no approved samples in the factories. When we see that, it's like, whoa, okay, that's a hands-off buyer. Okay, let's take a lot of photos so that they can see what we see in the factory. But the poor person who is in charge of quality, who will be reviewing the report, they're probably totally overworked. We need to make things easy for them because they will not spend a lot of time on one case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say production is underway, they have to follow up on the schedule. They tend not to get very good cooperation from the suppliers. The suppliers are picked usually mostly on price, and they don't provide much service, let's say it this way, right? So will the buyers, send someone to the factory and things like that? Usually no. I talked a bit about quality inspections. Usually they only do a final inspection, and usually it's only when the risk is not very low. So if it's a small order and the product category is not very risky, they will not really worry about that. They will just say, just skip it and we'll see, right? Sort of. And in the last podcast episode on this series of episodes about sourcing from China, we talked about building good rapport with suppliers. Well, if you pick your suppliers based on price and you don't spend much time training them on anything, do you think the relationship is going to be very good? Usually it is not. It is more adversarial than cooperative. So that's usually how they work from what we've observed.
Yeah, it makes sense. And in the case of big box retailers or supermarkets, I suppose it's by necessity, isn't it? You can't have thousands of SKUs and be able to put a huge amount of time into them. But nonetheless, they've got to make sure things are right. I mean, doing the quality inspections, that's a good start.
Yeah, that's sort of the minimum. And usually they know about it, at least when they're experienced, right? But that it would just be a final inspection, come in, check if there's any big problem. No big problem, let it ship, So it's that simple.
Yeah, that's a good sort of summarization of hands-off buyers. If we move on to hands-on buyers, then it won't surprise everybody listening to hear that they're quite different and kind of very opposite. So just take it away on the hands-on buyers.
Yeah, they are exactly opposite. So in certain industries, it's sort of a must. If you buy medical devices, and especially if you develop a new medical device that needs to be certified for sale in the EU, in US, or in other developed countries, it's going to be a heavy process. And that's sort of an extreme, right? But you need to make sure you're working with the right people because you're going to be working with them for a long time.
And there's a very real risk of prison if things go wrong.
Yes, because in the end, somebody has to take responsibility. And if it's a medical device, things could turn really, really ugly very fast. So if you develop a new medical device, so as I said, it's sort of an extreme. You need to make sure that they, the whole process that would allow you to certify the product is complied with, and it's a very heavy process, both for the buyer and for the manufacturer, right? So I'm not going to go too deep into that because it's sort of an extreme.
Sure.
I should mention the medical devices. Let's talk about Europe. In the European Union, if you buy if you develop a new product and you want it to have the CE mark, meaning that it comes under one of the directives, low voltage machinery, etc., and medical devices, is one of them. If it's in one of these product categories, it's got to have the CE mark. And the CE mark is not just on the product, it's always on the product and the manufacturer. I mean, it is on the product, of course, manufacturer cannot be CE marked, but if you change from one supplier to the other, or if you move it from one factory to the next, it's not that simple. You need to start the process over in most of the cases, right? So you're sort of getting married to the supplier, and you can just find someone on Alibaba and do a quick call on Skype or WeChat, and I have a good feeling. Let's keep going with these guys. This doesn't really work. I mean, it's very, very risky, right? Now, I would say any company that develops a new product from scratch and that will require a relatively heavy development needs to be hands-on. So if you design your own, I don't know, scarf, a simple kind of soft good, and you're going to buy it in relatively low quantity, I would say you can be relatively hands-off. The risk is not very high. The development is relatively simple. Now, if you develop, I don't know, a new kind of drone, I don't know, for agricultural purposes or something, or there's a lot of different products, but the design and the development work will take month and month, right? Again, you don't want to work with anybody just because you found them in a convenient way and they have proper English and you have a good feeling. You really need more than that. You really have to be hands-on in selecting and qualifying them and in following up on all of the development process and everything, because it's going to cost a lot of money. Except in some cases, if they say, well, okay, we know exactly what we're doing. We are a specialist of drones. We're going to do it like this, and we know exactly what we're doing, and we know we're going to put together a test plan. We're going to put together this and this and that. We know exactly what certifications to make, and we'll finance most of that work. Well, then, go and focus on sales and marketing, and you don't need to be on top of everything when it comes to development and manufacturing. Now, is that very, very common? Not so common, right? So if you develop a new product, again, that will require a development of several months, you want to be much more hands-on.
Yeah, it's about the products, isn't it? It's a good example, the drone, when you compare that to, a pen that gets given away at a conference, that you can see the very different requirements there. Absolutely. You mentioned you're probably going to be working with a supplier on that sort of product, a more advanced, more complicated product for longer. That's where we come on to the benefits then of working in a more hands-on way with these suppliers. So I think there's a couple of key sort of benefits, ways that doing so can reduce your risks.
Sure. Well, if you work with the right kind of manufacturer, you will tend to have much fewer issues, much fewer nasty surprises. And if you multiply that by, the number of, let's say, interactions or, and possible mistakes they might make for the next 10 years, it's really, really worth, spending more time from the beginning and all along to make sure you work with the right people and you really communicate your needs and your requirements very carefully and make sure that they really get it, right? If you cannot tolerate, again, nasty surprises, like quality issues, a lot of delays, and a trading company that changes the manufacturer suddenly, and some of the materials are not exactly what you wanted, and all these kinds of issues. If you cannot take such risks, then you really have to be involved, and you really have to spend a lot of time on it, right? To be more hands-on. And just to be sure people understand, when I say hands-on, It doesn't mean that the buyer has to do everything. There's a lot of companies on the ground in Asia that can do a lot of that work, right? It's not just us. There's really a ton of companies doing that. But still, they have to put the resources, right? That's the idea. They have to put the resources. Maybe they hire their own team in China, or in India, or in Vietnam, wherever they have a lot of work. And that's being hands-on. You hire your own team, or you work with a local service provider, or whatever. But you have to be much more involved in the whole process. So what you mentioned, you had two benefits. So the first one, as I mentioned, it reduces the number of potential mistakes and nasty surprises. And number two is that you get to know your category and the production processes much better. You know your suppliers and what they can do much better. And that gives you a much better understanding about maybe the risks associated with such and such supplier. For example, maybe this supplier is pretty good at machining, but when it comes to surface finishing, maybe plating, it's quite inconsistent versus that other supplier. Well, their machining skills are just okay, but surface treatment is always good, right? It's just an example. So you know your suppliers better, you make better decisions, you can see the risks better, so you know what to check better, and you know which ones have certain strength. For next time, maybe you want to develop a new product, you know that this one is a better suit than that one, right? So it's a lot of information when you spend more time getting involved in the process, supplier selection, new product development, manufacturing, follow-up, and so on. You will inevitably learn a lot, and that might give you some ideas, right? So these are really two big benefits.
Good. And some of the tasks that you just mentioned there, like the sourcing and all the rest of it. I mean, you went through those for the hands-off buyer and pointed out that they don't probably invest a lot of time and money into a number of the steps that we go through when we're going all the way from sourcing through to production and shipping. But conversely, with the hands-on buyer, they are going to be investing that time and money into all of these. And you get that enhanced control as well, don't you? Because you mentioned with the hands-off buyers, they might not be very, very forceful on, like their quality standard or product specifications and things like that, because they've got thousands of SKUs to get through. But those are things that the hands-on buyer would absolutely make very, very clear, right?
Yes, at least that's what they want to make clear. Whether they always make it clear is another topic. But if they do it right, they make it clear. Yeah, you're right. When I say reduce the risk, you what you said is another way to look at it from another angle. Yes, it gives them better control. It allows them to align what they require with what the manufacturer does much better. It gives them visibility to forecast risks and issues and take the necessary steps. And especially if they have proper contract and a clear standard and things like that, they can really hold their suppliers accountable for mistakes, which again, hands-off buyers, typically the non-professional, relatively inexperienced hands-off buyers fail to do, right? A lot of them don't even try to get the supplier to sign a contract that's enforceable. It's what they, and again, as I mentioned, they don't even really document what they want and what they cannot accept. They stay at a very superficial level. They will say something like, I want a 16 gigabyte memory, or I want this in microfiber, 92% polyamide and 8% spandex or something. But within that, there's, it leaves a lot of space for the manufacturer to to do, to get things wrong.
Absolutely. Okay. And my last point here is when you're working with a supplier long term, as maybe hands-on buyers would if they're going through all of the development and production, is there a risk that the supplier might then start to take advantage of you if they know that you're so sort of wedded to working with them?
Yeah, if you don't always keep a backup, and make sure that you don't invest too much time in a supplier. You don't invest in molds. You can just walk away anytime, So the dream of many hands-off buyers, is that okay, we can just walk out from a supplier anytime and go to another supplier, and they do a lot of things to keep that option as open as possible. With a hands-on buyer, the general tendency is quite different. They tend to try to put together more of a partnership, longer-term partnership with with fewer manufacturers and work more closely with them. Now, if these manufacturers then suddenly try to behave in non-ethical ways, they try to maybe lock in the buyer and say, well, whatever, your molds, we keep them, or this engineering work, yeah, we did it, you paid for it, but we don't give you the files, so you cannot really go away and get somebody else to make it. Of course, hands-on buyers are susceptible to be in that situation more than hands-off buyers, which really have not invested much at all in a relationship. Okay, but conversely, I might say that if you do not invest in the relationship, it's more likely that things will go wrong. Certainly the case. So if the idea is to go deeper with fewer suppliers. The idea for hands-on buyers, right? Work with fewer suppliers, help them maybe develop their capabilities, improve their performance over time, be a really good fit for what the importing company needs. And well, most of the time, if they keep a good relationship and they follow the right steps, things turn out okay, but in some cases, of course, the manufacturer feels that, hey, I'm the only supplier, in that product category to that company. There's nobody else who knows how to make that for them. Well, kind of a monopoly situation. Why would I try hard, right? So that's a risk. Of course, buyers always need to be careful with that. Need to be very careful, especially if it's one of your core products. You might be sort of taken hostage. So keep that in mind. Once they are in sort of a monopoly or quasi-monopoly situation, they can inflate the prices way too fast. They can think they can get away with really bad service, with delays, with poor quality, and so on. So you still need to have a backup. You still need to always try to cultivate at least another supplier, in each category, right? And maybe one of them is a bit more lower end, and the other one a little bit higher end. Even that's a problem, because if one of them tells you, hey, I don't care, whatever, I don't want to do that, then you still don't really have a backup. So you need to think of all that. It's a risk mitigation strategy. Of course, you should not skip it.
Yeah, good advice. And protecting the IP to, discourage things like this. We've written a guide about that. Share it in the show notes, of course. Actually, you did speak about developing backup suppliers, I think in the first episode in this series about sourcing, which, if I cast my mind back, I think might be episode 69. I'll leave the links for all of this series there. I think if you're sourcing, it's good to identify the sort of route you're going to need to take. I assume most listeners working for SMEs, or, you know, if they're starting up a new venture, they're probably going to be favored more by the hands-on approach. So this is a good reminder about that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to sum up, you need to know what makes sense for your company, and you need to adapt your strategy for sourcing, for new product development, and so on, to your needs. And you need to pick the right kind of supplier for that, and you need to organize yourself internally. So having clarity of mind about this, do you want to be more hands-on or more hands-off, is quite important, I would say.
Great. And now we know how to select between them, thanks to your good explanation there. So great. That's brilliant. Back again next week.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.